Hey coach, how many calories a day should I be eating? This is definitely a level 1 question. So if you happen to be a level 1 client or a level 1 person interested in learning how many calories you should be eating to achieve your fitness goals, this video is going to be for you. And if you guys happen to have any questions for us regarding anything maybe within the video, go ahead and leave them in the comment section down below. We would love to be able to answer those questions for you. We believe in leading with education and putting education before everything else so that you can have a better understanding of all of these metabolic processes and metabolic science so that you can stop the yo-yo, stop the craziness that you guys have been doing for the last 3 to 5 years and actually put your health and your fitness in your own hands. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into this video. Coach, how many calories a day should I be eating? Now for ease of use, I'm going to start off with method number 1. And what this essentially is I will refer to it as the biofeedback method. Now this is a lot and has a lot to do with you being able to essentially coach yourself or figure out how many calories you need per day to be able to maintain your body weight. Now, why would you ever want to maintain your body weight? Because we're here for fat loss. I'm watching all these fitness videos on YouTube because I want to learn how to oxidize fat. However, what you have to be mindful of is that many of you have spent the last 3 to 5 years already dieting. So therefore, if you've spent that amount of time in a caloric deficit, low carbing, trying all these different diets, you have to understand that there are consequences that come from your decision to do that. And one of the largest consequences that I see with many of our female clients specifically is very low functioning thyroid. Now, what we're referring to is low functioning thyroid hormone T3, which actually helps regulate your metabolism, okay? So keep that in mind before you say, maintenance phase, it's not really for me. Maintenance phase, I'm not interested. You need to be interested in the maintenance phase if you have spent the better percentage of the last 3 to 5 years trying to lose body fat. Now, if you have spent the last 3 to 5 years really focusing on dieting specifically, this video is for you. Now, I'm addressing this from a place of just care for the fact that either knowingly or unknowingly, you are likely metabolically adapted. Now, what causes metabolic adaptation has more to do with your hormones and your thyroid, and we'll save that for another video. But consider a maintenance phase an opportunity for you to make up for all the time that you've put yourself behind. Meaning that you've dieted for 3 to 5 years and you've never actually had a break or pull off the gas. You've just decided to do more exercise and more, cardio, more high intensity, more all of these things that are ultimately just stressing the system. And now your thyroid is likely turned down because you were on low calories for too long. So use this maintenance phase to actually bring your thyroid health back up to par. And this is how we do it. So how many calories per day? We're going to take the theoretical example of a 150-pound woman, okay? And we're going to times that by 10. That's going to give us a 1,500 calorie basal metabolic rate. Now, coming up next, we will have a sedentary example, a moderately active example, and a very active example. Now, how to determine where you fall within that is actually pretty easy. Number 1, how much do you move? How many steps per day do you take? And how often do you exercise? And what do you do for a living? Now, non-exercise activity thermogenesis is something that not a lot of people really take into consideration when they're trying to figure out what their maintenance calories are. So let me go ahead and provide you some hypothetical examples. Sedentary would be somebody who works a desk job. They probably do less than maybe 5,000 to 7,000 steps per day. Maybe they're not doing any cardio, but they spend a lot of their day sitting at a desk, answering emails, doing calls, something like that. So maybe this would be something reminiscent of maybe somebody like an online nutrition coach or something like that. Maybe somebody who works as a secretary, they work a phone, they do something like that. That's relatively sedentary. Somebody who's moderately active, this might be somebody who is not a all-in, on the floor all day long personal trainer, but maybe like a part-time kind of personal trainer. Maybe they're working with 5-6 clients per day, something like that. Or maybe this is like a nurse, somebody like this who's, moderately active. Now, very, very active, to provide you an example, this would be somebody who probably works outside for a living, somebody does lawn work, maintenance work, construction work, something like that. I actually have a client right now who falls in this category, but probably multiples over that. So he only weighs like 167 pounds, 170 pounds, and the guy's eating like 650, 700 grams of carbohydrates per day, but he also gets in between 20 and sometimes 25,000 steps per day. So all that stuff is very, very important to be able to consider when you're trying to figure out your maintenance calories. So I would have to imagine that most of you probably fall within the sedentary to moderately active area. Now, if I'm gonna do the math on these, you can do it, it's, you take 1,500 calories, times that by 1.3 if you are sedentary. And what's gonna happen is it's gonna give you a range. So working the math out on this, I'm just gonna go ahead and roll it off the top of my mind. This is probably gonna give you about 1,800 up to 1.6, which would be about half, so 750, which would give you about 2,200, somewhere around there for a pretty sedentary individual. Now we'll take 1.5, which would be somewhere around the neighborhood of about 2,100 calories. 1.8 would take this up to about, I'd say about 2,400. Now you can go above that. Obviously, we have a very active individual down there, which you can work that math out yourself, 1.8 up to 2. However, at 2, this would be approaching 3,000 calories. Now, in my experience, and the reason I'm not even gonna work that one out is because very, very few and far between have I ever had a female client that's capable of metabolizing over 3,000 calories or even getting up to 3,000 calories. The majority of women that I work with are very much so capable of getting 1,700 up to about 2,400, sometimes 2,500 calories, depending on a lot of different cofactors that do have to do with non-exercise activity thermogenesis, the overall health of their hormones, and the overall health of their metabolism, as well as how much muscle mass they have on their physiques. So this is how you would figure out the number of calories. So once you've determined what that number of calories is for you, let's just go ahead and start with an arbitrary 1,700 calories. What you're gonna do is you're gonna multiply that by 7 days, okay? Now what I mean by multiply that is that you're gonna run 1,700 calories for 1 solid week. Now if this person, this arbitrary 150-pound woman, did this for 7 days, making sure that she's sleeping enough, she's eating the right kind of distribution of macronutrients, sleeping well, avoiding stress, all these things. Let's just say her weight after 1 week was 149. Now keep in mind that you do have to check your weight every morning. So you would do daily weigh-ins, and then you would take the average. Now let's just say that the average after daily weigh-ins was 149. And then we do this again. So we do 1,700 calories again, times 7 days. And let's say that this woman actually starts to respond pretty well. Let's say she drops to 148. Well, guess what? You could just about guarantee that this 1,700 calories for her probably isn't going to be enough to establish a maintenance level. So what you would want to do with a female, and this is again taking probably more of a conservative approach, but I like to increase or decrease by, maybe just a couple hundred. So I would go ahead and plus 200, which would put us up to 1,900 calories. Now what would happen in a perfect world is that she would obviously run this for 7 days, and then she would actually maintain 148. Now she'd run that for a week. Now, over the course of 3 weeks, you could essentially figure out what your maintenance level is just by watching the biofeedback, checking the scale, looking what's my daily weigh-in average and what am I maintaining, what calorie marker am I maintaining body weight at. And this is gonna be the biofeedback method. So that was the biofeedback and the calculated method basically put into one so that you guys can figure out how many calories you should be eating on a daily basis to ultimately learn what your maintenance calories are. Now, before I let you go, there are some very important things that I want you guys to be able to consider when you're trying to figure out how many calories a day you should be eating, and I wrote them right up here. So number 1 is going to be how many calories are you eating right now? So based off of the questionnaires that we get at The Educated Dieter, we know that the average caloric intake for most women is between 1,100 and 1,400 calories. So I think it's very important to take that into consideration, because you would not want to jump your calories up too high in the beginning if you're not capable of metabolizing that, because I could guarantee you it will result in weight gain. And the worst way to start off any coach-client relationship is to have a woman gain, 5 or more pounds within the first few weeks, and then she's kind of freaking out. So what I like to do is take a more conservative approach in the beginning. And again, this is kind of more of an N of 1 type of scenario. It actually kind of separates the calculated method and it has to be like this and all the science, to actually taking the individual into consideration and programming specifically for them, knowing all of the calculations and all of that stuff as well. So I like to go a bit more conservative. If they are eating about 1,300 calories to start with, I'll bump them up to 1,600 calories to start with and just see how they handle it. Number 2 is going to be your current lifestyle. What is their lifestyle? Ask them to track their steps. Ask them to give you a layout of what their activity level looks like. When they wake up, what do they do? Halfway through the morning, what are they doing? At lunch, what are they doing? Ask for these things. That way you can kind of get a better understanding of what that person's lifestyle is actually like. Calorie amount for females, and I think this is something very important to consider as well, because what I've noticed over the last 11 years is that in many cases, if a female is not capable of getting her calories up over 16, 17, 1,800 calories without gaining weight, usually there's going to be some type of hormonal issue that is not for the sake of this video, but definitely something to consider when you have a female client that just for no rhyme or reason just cannot get their calories up over 17, 1,800. We'd probably highly recommend you having them consult with a professional and have them get some lab values done to actually see whether or not their hormones are considered healthy. Now, last but definitely not least, one of the main primary reasons you would want to keep your calories high relative to what we just worked out here on the board is because higher calories will help you to optimize your thyroid function, and your free T3 thyroid function helps you optimize your metabolic rate. So the healthier free T3 is, the healthier your metabolic rate is. Now, the reason we need to get that up is so that we can create a caloric deficit to oxidize fat in the future. So if you're capable of getting calories, you're capable of going through this, you're capable of learning how to do this for yourself, you would definitely want to keep your calories in this healthy place for at least 3, 4, 5, or 6 months, depending on whether or not you are healthy right now and how long ago the last time you dieted was. So as an example, if you dieted a year ago and since then you've been on higher calories, you're probably in a pretty good position to go ahead and try to improve your body composition again. If you've dieted for the last 3 to 5 years and you've never had a maintenance phase or a period of time where you intentionally ate more to build muscle, to build metabolism, to start with, I'd recommend 6 months of you eating at maintenance calories before you ever consider a fat loss phase. I appreciate you guys. This is William Grazione with The Educated Dieter, and we'll see you in the next video.